This is going to be a really, really cool experience for y'all to hear from some recent Mines grads in the aerospace industry and things that they've done and gone through to get to where they are now. So without further ado, we have Claire, who's a systems test engineer at WoAA. Jacob, who's a manufacturing specialist at GE Aviation. And Michael, who's a manufacturing engineer at Ball Aerospace. So if y'all want to introduce yourselves real quick and tell us a little bit more than that one sentence says, that would be awesome.
Hey, well, I'm Claire. I just graduated in May. And as it says, I'm a systems test engineer at ULA. And so if you don't know who ULA is, we make rockets. So it's pretty cool. We're like SpaceX, but less new. And so systems test engineer is a really vague term. I specifically work on, so I work at our launch site, which is pretty cool. So like tomorrow, there's gonna be a rocket launch and I'm just gonna see it as like a normal part of my day. And so then I'm part of like these ground systems. So my team works on sending lots of gases and cryogenic fluids through the rocket, which I don't fully understand yet, but that's generally what I do.
Were you done, Claire? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I work in rockets. That's it. That's all you gotta know.
I'm Jacob Feldman. My title is manufacturing specialist. I currently kind of serve in two roles as a product quality engineer and a materials applications engineer for GE Aviation. So I'm much more focused on, I'm kind of split between quality of the parts that go into our engines and the application and design of the engines. Obviously we're not rockets, a little less cool, but we do, I mean, any engine that goes on a 737, 787, not all, about 2/3 of military engines come through us. So I do a lot of the source substantiation. So I work with forgers specifically, doing closed die forging, powder forging, all that kind of stuff. So just it's a long title for a metallurgical engineer.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Mike. So I graduated spring 2018 as a manufacturing engineer at Ball. It's kind of different from maybe what you'd have initially in mind as far as, like practicing Lean Six Sigma tactics where you're doing like a more of a mass manufacturing type deal. Just because where I work in Boulder, we pretty much make one-off satellites. And so it's more of like, I'm trying to put all of the parts together along the whole build. So I make sure everything gets put together in the right order and everything's documented to a T because we have to report back to the government at the end of the day. And everything is regulated like crazy. So a lot of paperwork, but I also get to be there when everything's getting assembled and built up and make sure it all works well. So at the end of the day, I get to see a satellite.
We launched those satellites.
It's true. I think our last one went up with SpaceX, sorry.
Shake my head. How dare you?
Awesome. Thank you so much for those introductions. What we're going to do is I have a few sort of canned questions that I'll go through. And anyone who's on, please post whatever question you want in the chat or like raise your hand, the little raise hand function in Zoom, and you can ask your question. And so it's just mostly getting y'all some information and yeah, some awesome stories. So the first question I have is how did you approach career fair and job applications and internship applications while you were in your undergrad? Anyone can start.
Yeah, Claire, if you want to go first.
I guess if you're volunteering me, sure.
Yeah, we'll just go the same order.
So I think researching your companies is a really important thing. So like my junior year for career fair, I went freaking ham. I remember like it was like a full-time job that week. I was like, we are gonna be ready for this. And I researched a lot of companies and especially if you don't have a ton on your resume, like, because you have that weird interaction, I guess, when it's not online career fair, where you hand your resume and then they look at it. And then if you don't have anything on there, they like kind of look disappointed and then you don't know what to say. But if you ask them questions before they can read your resume, then they never get to that disappointed part of the day. And so then you really skip over that. So I totally recommend that. And then also having fun. Like a lot of people are really stressed at career fair. And in the end, like, well, they're trying to hire someone who's smart. They also want to hire someone that they like being around, because there's a lot of smart people of Minds. And so I think it is hard to have fun at career fair because it's really stressful. But if you are, I think that makes a good impression.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jacob.
No, you go ahead.
I was just
I'm still formulating.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about just kind of being personable. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, do I like this person? You know, a lot of people are going to pick up a lot of information on the job. And so you learn quite a bit in school, but, you know, all of the specialties that you develop as you go through your career, you're going to realize, oh, I, you know, didn't know half the things that I needed to. So a lot of it's just being able to kind of interact with your employer and your peers and mentors and really be able to pick up what you are going to learn. And so, you know, if you can kind of portray that as, hey, you know, I'm here, I'm willing to learn, and I'm, you know, a person that I'd like to kind of dive in, I think that's a big step too. I was very bad about applying to internships while I was at Mines. I know I didn't have one freshman or sophomore year, which was really bad. I worked at a golf course freshman year. I don't remember what I did sophomore year. But junior year, I was able to work for a biomed company. And after senior year, I did the same thing and then was out of a job for about 5 months while I applied around. So a lot of that was based off of connections, I think. So if you can't have like a really outstanding resume, just be a really cool person.
I would second that. I think like career fair is important for sure. It's obviously a place where all these employers are getting together. They're ready to hire people. A lot of them aren't. But unfortunately for you guys, but I think especially when you're a senior and you're going through a full-time position, it's definitely like a year-round thing. It doesn't end at career fair. I've had 3 or 4 engineering jobs through Mines, and only one of them I got at career fair. Info sessions are just as important in my mind. Some people may disagree with that, but like they said, being sociable, being just a nice, cool, easygoing person. Obviously that resume helps back you up, and it's very important, but being someone who is friendly and someone who people want to be around is ideal for, because when a recruiter's coming to campus, they're a person too, and they don't want to work with someone who's going to be a pain in their side for the next however many months or years. So yeah, I would second everything that Claire and Mike have said, and go to career fair. Obviously it's kind of over now, and then follow up with info sessions, send follow-up emails, and just, be nice.
Awesome, thanks. How did y'all deal with online applications? Because I don't know if y'all have heard, but the career fair this semester was very difficult to talk to anyone. But did y'all apply online, and how did that go?
I got my internship by applying online. Yeah, and there was a girl who had graduated from my sorority like a year before I even got there, and just posted in a Facebook group chat like, hey, I work at this company and it's not that hard to get an internship. And I was like, cool. And so then I applied. Like, I didn't even tell her. It's not like she like helped me get in or anything. And I don't even know. I think, so Mike and I were actually both presidents of ASME. And I think that's like 100% how I got this interview, is because that looked really cool. I guess it's really about volume, but I also, that thing you do when you get really panicked at night that you're not going to get a job and you're going to be homeless, and you like panic apply to like 15 jobs. And I just would highly recommend not doing that, because it's never helped me. Like when you actually apply and you make like a cover letter and you go for it. But I would do that sometimes. Like I get really nervous junior year, especially because I was like, if I don't get an internship, I'm just going to die and I'm going to be homeless. There's no point I even win here. And I got a job and I'm not homeless. So yeah.
Congrats.
I think like kind of what Claire just said, I definitely was someone who would just plug my resume into as many places as it could possibly fit. And that did not do me any good at any point. I actually was told by a ball recruiter to not do that. So I'll be interested to see what Mike says about it. But looking at, in hindsight, if somebody doesn't want you for the position that you are actually like, that you fit within the margins of, it's very unlikely that they're going to consider you for a position that's just, you know, if you want to be materials and production engineer 1, well, don't apply for vibrations engineer or something like, you know, if they're two different, that's what I did. Maybe other people don't do that. That's what I did. It's like, you know, if my name's out there, my name's out there. But being intentional about where you're applying, even when it's online, and having a reason and being able to list and explain your reasoning for that, even if you are like a civil applying for a mechanicals job, you can do that as long as you have a reason and there's a method to your madness, kind of. But as long as that intention is there, employers will understand that. They won't understand submitting 30 resumes for 30 different jobs.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the shotgun approach typically didn't work nearly as well as you think it would initially, just because, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of responses. It just doesn't work out that way. Despite all of the automatic filters, the ones that do get through, when somebody actually lays eyes on it, they want to see that you were either A, tailoring your resume for the job, or B, that you at least did research and applied skills that fit on a page that fit directly with that job description. I don't want to speak too much towards like success with online applications, because I know I got both of mine through connections. So I tend to advocate more heavily towards that, is even if you have someone that you know that's not even a close friend, it's a second or third connection, use them and be completely honest about it. Be like, hey, you know, I need a job, help me. And more often than not, people are going to, because people want to help you out, you know. I think it's actually more common for second and third connections to help because they're not directly invested. Or it's like, well, if this person doesn't work out, I might not have to be their friend anymore. Like, yeah, I'll throw you a bone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all your answers. It looks like we have a lot of questions now, so I'll stop doing my canned ones and we can move on. So the first one I see is for anyone. When meeting employers at career fair, what are some ways that you can make yourself stand out against all of the other students, other than, I guess, being personable, which a lot of y'all mentioned?
Are we going in order still, or should?
If you want to go.
Yeah. Add, except be personable.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, being personable is huge, like we've already said. So the job that I'm in now, so the quick story behind it is that I went to an info session for Ball, which that job didn't pan out for me. But after Ball's info session was GE Aviation. And I couldn't make GE Aviation's info session because I had prior commitments. So before the info session, I walked up and shook the hand of the guy that was presenting and said, hey, I'm not able to make it today. I'm sorry, but I just, I really don't know what I'm trying to say here. Like, I'm introducing myself basically. And he said, why don't you just leave a resume? Like, it won't hurt. And then I got the call and ended up getting the job. So yes, like, the info session is important, everything else is important, but like doing something that makes you stand out is important as having an attribute that stands out. So if you just sort of standing in line all day at career fair, one after the other, you have a chance to get hired. But if you, walk up and shake somebody's hand or start a conversation with an employer in the student center, something like that, those interactions really do matter. And don't go and pester someone who's just trying to have like a coffee in their 10-minute break that they get. But, starting a friendly conversation with somebody I just started 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with someone in my apartment complex who happens to work for P&G and who happened to graduate from Mines. And I live in Cincinnati right now. And so like meeting people and having those connections can be extremely useful down the road. So that's networking is my general answer.
I think there's there's an order of operations to like meeting an employer, I think, and instead of walking up and just handing them your resume and going into your spiel, make it a little bit more personal as far as, hey, this is my name, this is what I do, this is kind of who I am, and then maybe dive into the resume. I guess I'm not articulating it terribly well, but it's the handshake and the eye contact to kind of start the conversation instead of just being a robot and here's my resume, hire me, which is really intimidating at times, but it's one of those things you just kind of have to embrace. Like you're making a connection with somebody, and it tends to last a little bit longer than a piece of paper.
Awesome. Oh, Claire, do you have something to say?
No, I mean, you guys covered it.
Okie doke. This one has a couple people who want it answered, so I guess we'll move on to this. Should you write a cover letter for each online application or focus more on your resume?
I saw this one and I think you should make a cover letter for every single application, because your cover letter is like, because your resume, everyone has their own thing. I actually never tailored my resume. Maybe I should have been. I feel like I should have been, but I didn't. And then, but you 100%, your cover letter is company specific. And it's like specific to the job. You should use like keywords from the job application in your cover letter. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah,
That one's tough. I don't know.
I made the mistake of just kind of cookie cutting my cover letter. I would put the company name in, then I would like Control H and replace with the next company name. And I definitely think, you know, if a cover letter is required and you're throwing an application in for an internship and you just want to get it in, sure, it's not gonna hurt you. But if you really want a job and you're truly invested in a specific job or a couple specific jobs, like definitely tailor it to that job. This may be one of the only times you ever submit a cover letter. I think after your first job, you'd never use a cover letter again. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but right now, a lot of people are going to require it, and you should, if you really are interested in the job you'll be doing, you should, you know, tailor it to what you're doing.
Especially since right now, like we're saying all these things, like you should talk to them and shake their hands, and you can't do any of those things right now. Like your cover letter is kind of your only opportunity to say something more personal than just your resume and your address. So I think I would use it.
Yeah, that was the one part I was forgetting about too, because I don't remember who I was talking to, but somebody was saying that they tended not to look at cover letters, but with everything being completely online, I bet it's probably stepped up its game as far as importance. I mean, that being said, don't cookie cut it.
Okie doke. I guess switching gears a little bit, can you all speak more to the skills you've learned on the job, how it differs from your undergrad coursework, and how you've developed those skills, employer training, independent professional development, etc.?
So something I think, so to be fair, I'm not deep into my job. I'm like a month and a half into my job. But my team is literally called Ground Fluids. And I took 2 fluids class at Mines. Like I took an advanced fluids class, and I use absolutely no fluids. And so I don't really use a lot of my degree except for like working hard and problem solving. I think I eventually will, but I don't actually really use in this job any of the classes I took.
It's a really typical answer that I think I've heard a bunch too, is you get out and you're like, oh, well, there was statics once. I don't know if I'll use that again. But yeah, you'll use a lot of the concepts, I think, because what I do day to day, if I'm reviewing drawings, they're like, oh, you know, can we make this or not? I'll use a lot of GD&T to see, hey, how much is this going to cost if we take it from this tolerance to this tolerance, or maybe general principles to actually interpret what like the mechanical engineers are giving me. But from a manufacturing standpoint, I definitely don't use as much of my mechanical degree as I expected I would. I think a lot of our mechanical engineers do actually use quite a bit. You know, there's a lot of really in-depth analysis, FEA, and you know, structural things going on in a spacecraft. So, you know, I feel like they apply it a lot more than I would. But for my specific application, everything that I learn on the job is system tools. How does this company operate? What's the best way to move material around? What's the best way to do my job, essentially? And none of it would have really come from school, except for general attitude. And, oh, this is how to learn.
I think you know, depending on the day will change how much of my degree that I use, but I do use a lot of metallurgy in my day-to-day operations, I guess, especially when I'm on the phone with suppliers or with customers and stuff, and we're wondering about like the cycle lives of different parts and stuff. You don't have to know anything offhand. It's not like I just went and memorized a whole bunch of metallurgical facts, but you just get the more you talk about these things, the more you better understand them, and school helped that, but it was just a foundation. It wasn't like it taught me everything I need to know. The thing that I've learned most, and again, so I'm going on 5 months of the job now. The thing that I've been taught most on the job is how to argue, as odd as that is. But you know, there was like, for the first 2 months, I would be in these situations where I knew I was right, but I was the new guy, and I wouldn't, and maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong, and I wouldn't like argue my point. And then somewhere along the way, I just kind of, kind of a fire got lit under me or whatever, but I just decided to stand up for myself and my opinions and my thought processes. And learning how to argue with people who have 30 years of experience it's kind of like an art form. It's like, you don't want to overstep your bounds because you're 5 months on the job, but at the same time, you have a degree and you're here for a reason and your opinion matters. And learning how to navigate when you can stand up for something and when you can just kind of need to concede to whoever's ahead of you is tough.
Know when to learn and like know when to go the other direction.
It's a great way to put it.
That one's tough because it's like, you know, you've got a lot of your senior mechanicals that have so much experience from, you know, I mean, they've done it for 30 years. And you're like, oh, you probably know what you're talking about, but there's new perspectives that they might have missed.
Right.
Be tactful, I guess.
Yeah. And people from different positions are always going to have different objectives. And from a general from a professional standpoint, no matter what job you're in, I think it's incredibly important to realize where your coworkers are coming from. So like with GE, we have it set up so we have like the commercial side, and then we have design. And in between that is quality and applications. And so commercial is just trying to ship parts out the door, make money, do everything. Design is trying to make sure that we have a perfect engine and that we know we have a perfect engine. And that's impossible to know. You can statistically know it, but you can't cut up every part to figure out what's wrong with it. Then you couldn't produce an engine. So everybody's going to be arguing for a different standpoint, and it usually ends up at a happy medium. But so that, for me, that process happens kind of daily.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And the diversifying of perspectives is definitely getting better as the field diversifies more. Switching gears again, talking about salary negotiations. When does that occur? How much should we press that? And also I'm going to add to this question, salary negotiations for internships. Big question mark. What do y'all think? What did y'all do?
I am personally of the belief with internships, you just take what you get. Like you're not in a position to argue it. Most companies have internships just kind of set. But with jobs, it's out of college, it's really tough. And later in your career, not that I know, but later in your career, you're, defending yourself and arguing a salary is definitely going to be a big part of getting a new job. But I didn't mention salary until I was at the end of my interview for my on-site interview. And when I mentioned it, they offered me the job, like in the room. So they were already ready with it, and it was kind of take it or leave it. And I've heard of people that have actually argued like medical benefits and ups in salary, that kind of stuff. But that's really tough to do when it's your first,
Yeah.
your first go at it.
Right. I kind of had a similar experience where, day one for like getting the associate engineering position, this is going to be my first job out of college at Ball. They're like, here's your salary. I'm like, all right, well, I have 0 ammunition right now, so I'm just going to kind of run with it. another thing too that I've noticed about Ball is that a lot of their pay structures are very like set as you go through each tier. So in an associate position, I think the general range was about maybe 65 to 70, depending on where you were and how many months in were. So we were structured where you come in at whatever your base rate is, say it's $65,000. You get, with the associate program, you get a review every 6 months, and it's got a set cap for the incremental raise every 6 months. So at 6 months, if you get the full percentage raise, you get 2% or 2.5%. At a year, you get another 3%. At a year and a half, you get 4%. And then at the end of 2 years, you either get a 7% raise or whatever your next value is within engineering 1. And so within that structure, I just wanted to hit the maximum because that's really all I could do. But if you can argue to get to the next tier, I think that's usually the most important thing. I just pulled my 2-year raise 7 months early. And so instead of having to wait that extra 6 months to get that next step, I was able to get it, 6-7 months earlier than they had wanted to give it to me. And thankfully I can rely on my manager to negotiate for me with HR. So we don't have too much autonomy really, but I haven't gotten to the point where I really have to negotiate like a yearly raise.
Yeah, for me, I was offered the job like via email. I guess they probably called me, but they sent me the offer via email. And then I just sent back like 3 sentences to HR saying like, hey, this is the salary you gave me. This, I kind of expected it to be, I sent like 5,000 to 10,000 more than what they gave me. I honestly feel like I could have gone balls to the wall, so like 15, 20, maybe that would have been too much. And I sent 3 sentences and then they gave me $2,500 more a year. So I totally recommend asking. I guess I was in a different position than you guys, so it was like they didn't just hand me the offer and say, this is it. But I had asked a friend previously who had worked there, like, did you negotiate? He's like, oh, I hear they don't. And I decided I wasn't going to lose anything, and then I just gained $2,500 for 3 sentences. So that's the best thing I've done.
Whereas they could say is no, and then you get the same amount.
Yeah, you get the same amount. They won't take the job away from you because you asked.
Yeah,
right.
And you can definitely clarify like what. So I got offered my amount, and then I asked about when raises occur, and I was guaranteed a raise in 18 months, and so that's written into my contract, as well as I asked if there was going to be, if like my salary was adjusted for inflation year over year. They wrote that into the contract. So there are things you can work with. They just kind of threw a number at me, and I was so shocked that like, yes, like that.
The other half of it is you're like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, like that's more money than I've ever had in my entire life. So, so it and at the end of the day, kind of fight for what you're worth. If you get a job in the aviation industry and they say we're going to pay you $42,000, like either don't take it or ask what the heck is going on. Your worth, especially coming from mines, I can tell you honestly, no matter who you are, what your GPA is, or where you're going, you're worth more than $40,000. Now where you lie depends on who you are.
Whoa.
But yeah. So fight for what you're worth. If you think you're worth more than what they're giving you, like Claire said, just send a message.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So if anyone wants to ask a question verbally or post them in the chat, go for it.
Would you guys suggest getting a graduate degree?
That's
no in the background.
I mean,
choose your words
yes.
wisely. Wisely, Jake, wisely.
Amanda's getting a grad degree.
Yeah, Amanda, how do you feel about this question?
Amanda, none of us have grad degrees, I don't think.
That's true. Yeah.
I have one.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I do.
Yeah, Jake can talk about it too.
It's definitely, this is going to sound kind of bad at first. It's definitely not necessary. Like most people leave with a bachelor's degree, and most people I work with don't have a graduate degree. But there are people that do, and there are people that do for specific reasons. I got mine because I'm very interested in the business and economics side of engineering. And so I got my ETM, and I'm eventually going to go back and get an MBA. But if you're yes, the pay can be different with a grad degree. And some companies, before you decide on a grad degree, some companies have programs that will pay for it for you. But it can help if if you're a metallurgist and you really want to do forging, you can go get a grad degree in closed die forging, and that'll help you get a job in closed die forging. It really won't help you, like it will help you just because you have a master's or you have a PhD or whatever, but make sure it's intentional, like with where you want to be. If you're just getting one to get one, it's not worth it.
I think to follow up with that too is don't get one because you couldn't get a job and now you just want to buy up your time doing something else.
There's a lot of petroleums doing that right now. So
right, and it's a really good way to add debt unnecessarily if you're not focused on what you specifically want to get your advanced degree in. Zoe, so what they can do is either they'll bounce your pay up, or they'll just offer you years of experience in replacement for your master's degree. So Ball, I know, qualifies a master's degree as 2 years of experience right away. And so instead of coming in as an associate, you would come in as an E1. And then they also attribute, I think, a doctorate to 4 years. And so you'd come in as an E2.
My experience too. So my first internship, I was with Northrop Grumman, and I was heavily debating whether to do a master's or take a return offer full-time with them. And when I talked to a lot of people, my manager at the time, she only had a bachelor's and she didn't have a master's, and she was managing our group, and she had reached the ceiling of her career without getting a degree above a bachelor's. So I had talked to her, and she was like, if you want to get higher than me, get a master's. It didn't even matter what it was in. So that helped my decision, because I got the same master's degree Jake got. I got engineering technology management. And at Mines, they offer the 1 year additional degree. So I'm not doing a thesis, but I'm still getting a master's of science, which carries more weight than an MBA to engineering firms, I've found in my experience. And people are putting me in at, like a higher salary, a second degree, and all I spent was 1 more year, whereas like other people in industry are spending 2 years working in that industry. And I'll be bumped above them, whether that's fair or not, I don't know, but it's nice for me, I guess. And then, I got mine in the ETM program because I would like to go more management. So I think if you have aspirations to do that down the line, every company I've talked to at Career Fair has been like really impressed with getting that master's. And if you can tailor it when you're talking to companies, that you're pairing the soft skills and the finance background with engineering principles and like communicating with engineers, I don't know, my experience, companies eat that up like really well. So that's my 2 cents. Also, one other thing, I didn't want to do a master's while I worked, because Northrop does have and like every company has a program where they'll pay for your master's, and they will, but there's a lot of stipulations, a lot. I looked into them. They'll pay for your master's like only a certain number of credits at the time per year and stuff. So essentially what that does is it causes you to finish in 3 to 4 years, which is like the fastest you can accomplish it unless you're killing yourself and paying for it out of pocket also, which I also like wouldn't recommend. So I didn't want to spend 3 or 4 years of my early career like having less of a social life maybe, and like, I don't know, not doing things I enjoy outside of work all day. So that's something to consider on that side, as well as how fast you want to get it done and do other things. So
I think do your research first,
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions? I have a couple more canned ones if no one has questions.
There was one before the incident that someone had asked about if it would hurt their chances of getting an internship next year if they applied this year, even though they were a freshman.
I don't think he's still in here.
Okay. Well, if any of you see them, let them know that it's quite the opposite. If every time you apply for an internship, it's going to increase your chances of getting that internship. It's whether it's just by the recruiter knowing your name, the recruiter, you being on their email list, like all of those things and all those metrics like matter. So if you're really and there's nothing, if any of you here are first year students, there's nothing saying you won't get an internship. I have people at work, a good friend of mine and a coworker of mine did 3 internships at Boeing in college, freshman, sophomore, junior year, like after each respective year. And it doesn't happen that often, but you know, Boeing picks up freshmen, and so does GE, and I'm sure Northrop does, and I'm sure Ball and ULA have done it before too. So, you know, there's nothing saying that they won't grab a freshman to do. It probably won't be a lot of interesting work, to be honest. It's gonna be a lot of grunt work, but and a lot of learning. But it's experience.
I see the minor question. Oh, sorry. No, Claire, you're running this. I'm sorry. What am I doing?
You're good. You're good.
Okay, cool. So I got a minor in McBride. Any McBriders out there? But I don't know if it's technical. I think it helps. I think it helps. If you're a McBride, then you understand the struggles of back and forth with McBride sometimes. But I think it helps because I think it helps me with like people skills. But I'm not necessarily applying it directly to this. Anyways, it's not a technical minor, but I have to give a McBride shout out.
My roommate has a CS minor with a Mechie degree, and he works for Northrop Grumman, or my former roommate. So he now works with Northrop Grumman in their Colorado Springs facility. So, oh, look at that. I don't think it's the same person Amanda's talking about.
I have yet another question. I have many more.
Yeah.
Am I crazy to get 2 minors along with my major of being a mechanical engineer?
I don't think you're crazy for anything you want to do at Mines, but if you're interested in, you know, I don't know what your minors are, but if you're interested in them, go for it if you have the time.
Physics and computer science.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's cool. You just would have to do trade-offs with other things in your life, but you can do it.
I will say advice I got from companies early on was that they valued a master's more than minors. And I don't know if that's a blanket statement, so please take that with like a grain of salt. And I'm not telling you not to, of course, but I was thinking about a minor early on as well and decided not to. And I started my master's degree early because I finished my bachelor's early because of not attempting a minor. But that's just what I heard on that once.
Kind of whichever way you want to put the credits.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and go to Riley's question because that was actually similar to the canned question I was going to go to. In hindsight, are there any technical skills you wished you picked up on before hitting the workforce?
I really wish I would have spent more time in the machine shop actually learning how they worked and how difficult it is to hit a tolerance. Aerospace, we're dealing with, you know, thousandths and 10,000ths of an inch at a time, and seeing how difficult it is to hit that by hand and then being able to see what our really skilled machinists are able to do is incredible. And it gives you a really good perspective on this is what I can make. You know, a lot of people have these really cool designs, but you can't manufacture it. Or, you know, you can build it, but it's going to be super expensive. But yeah, it helps kind of communicate with both your technicians, your manufacturing personnel, and just across the whole spectrum of, yeah, this is how it works.
I think I'm just very glad that Mines taught me how to use critical thinking to solve problems. That's what I use most in my day-to-day job. But if I had to choose a technical skill, it would probably be reading micrographs, which if you're not MME. You might not ever run into that in your entire life, but like when you look at grain maps of materials, judging by the size of the grains in a material, you can assume material properties, and that's huge in the materials world. You don't have to memorize it, but you should be familiar with it from a materials perspective. And I ignored the hell out of those in college because I didn't want to deal with it. They were hard and they were confusing and I didn't like them. And now I deal with them all the time. And they're actually really cool. I just didn't give them a fair shot. So.
Yeah, I agree with Mike on the machine shop thing. For sure, I think that'd be helpful. Specifically for me, I wish I knew how to read a schematic better because I look at how pipes and valves and gauges are all connected. I didn't really know how to read that for a while, so I wish I paid attention in circuits, but I can also Google that and figure it out.
I think Mines also really needs to expand their manufacturing processes curriculum. That'd be helpful all around. But that's just me.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okie doke. I think I'll ask this last question and I'll have any last words, any last thoughts y'all want to say. Did any of y'all get the focus in aerospace?
I don't think it was around yet for me.
There's
Would you
nobody
recommend
from
it?
so there's nobody from GE minus a few of our PhDs that do R&D design for new engines that have aerospace degrees. A lot of it is just we have PhDs in fluid mechanics and that kind of stuff, but usually, I mean, I can't speak for true like aerospace and defense people since I'm more commercial and military aviation, but like when you work for an aerospace or an aviation company, you have a specific role within your company. Like, yes, it's aerospace, but you're either a mechanical engineer working on mechanical systems, or you're a metallurgical working on material systems, or you're an electrical working on electrical systems. There are aerospace engineers that I know, but you have to like look into what aerospace engineers do. Don't get an aerospace focus because you want to be in aerospace, you know. Your focus might better be in like machine design or in manufacturing processes or in non-ferrous metals or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Take an aerospace focus if you actually like those classes and those are classes you want to take, but I don't know how helpful it would be to put on your resume to get an aerospace job.
Just kind of how you apply it, I'm sure. Without knowing what the classes are that we're offering, it's hard to tell, but
Surely wouldn't.
yeah, how much of a difference it makes on a resume, probably put less emphasis on that than the skills learned.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Do y'all have like any last 2 cents as parting words?
Yeah, you know, I get to watch rockets launch and I live a block from the beach. So come work in Cape Canaveral, Florida, and we can all be best friends.
Oh, yeah. I think the one takeaway I'd have is actually, so Amanda and I had a pretty similar experience on what we had thought we were going to go into and what we ended up in. Both of us were super into biomed for a few years, and then now we're in aerospace. So I guess don't be afraid to jump around between industries. You know, you're not set. And even if it's not what you're interested in, it's what you'll become interested in eventually. So, you know, just kind of Stockholm syndrome.
It's positive.
Yeah.
I would say, and you know, everyone has their individual experiences. And so Mike and Claire may disagree with this, but I'm really glad that I worked for a global company that does aerospace, because I mean, the thing, you know, my COVID has kind of ruined a whole lot of stuff, unfortunately. But even with COVID, next month I'm going to be in LA. The following month I'm going to be in Mexico. If COVID clears up, I'll be in Europe early next year. And then most of our engineers live in Europe. So in about 2 years, it's a very real possibility that I'll go to Munich to live for a few years. And having a global network of possibilities within a company, I think is really cool. But the moral of that is think about what size of company you want to work for, because obviously you have Ball that's a little bit smaller. You have GE that's a massive conglomerate of whatever they do. And then you have Lockheed, who sits somewhere in the middle. You have ULA, you have SpaceX, like, all these different size companies do different things. And size is definitely going to make you feel different in a company. Some people are going to hate a huge company, and some people like me will love being in a huge company. So kind of think, whatever brought you to Mines, you wanted to be at a small school, those same things may or may not apply when you choose your job. And so definitely do what you want to do, but make sure that above all else, you're going to be happy where you end up. If aerospace is all you've ever wanted to do, but then you go work for a company that doesn't fit with you, you're going to learn to hate what you do. And that's unfortunate. So that's my life 2 cents.
Awesome.
Don't be afraid to quit your first job either.
For
A lot of people will switch after about a year or two. I know probably half of my friends have already switched jobs. And it's not because you didn't work out, it's just you wanted to go do something else. And it's perfectly fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacob, Claire, and Michael, for coming. We really, really appreciate your advice and stories.
Long drive.
Yeah. Have a awesome evening, and students, would love to see you on the 30th for our next member meeting.